Well, you've probably heard about Zama Zamas and the way that they are illegally mining gold, and then you get the outrage from certain parts of the media that they're getting stuck under mines, and we've got to pull them out and look after them. That's probably about the upside of what we're going to discuss this morning. These Zama Zamas are not just poor guys who need to scrape together a living. They're organized in certain areas, syndicates, heavily armed, and ruining a big part of South Africa's future, a big part of South Africa's economic drive, which is, think about the Kruger National Park or the Mpumalanga province in the east of South Africa. There is, however, a group of people who's standing up and trying to do something about it. It's an extraordinary story, and we talk today to Wet du Toit, who's involved in what is called the Blyde River Task Force. He is, I suppose, talking to us under considerable threat to himself, but we need to get the story out. David, thank you for joining us. When I read your email, it stopped me in my tracks. Let's just go back a little. Everyone's heard of a zama-zama. And as I mentioned in the introduction, it's, these poor guys, they come from wherever and they're scratching a living by digging in old gold mines and so on. But the people you're dealing with are not worthy of any kind of sympathy. And perhaps you can just unpack for us who these heavily armed illegal gold mining syndicates are and why they've targeted the Blyde River area.
Good morning, Alec. Thank you so much for having us. Yes, so the heavily armed enforcers in this industry, generally in South Africa, especially in this part of the world, is the Basotho people. They are from Lesotho. Now, these foreign groups have kind of entrenched themselves in this area. They are heavily armed. They use small arms, sometimes even up to RPGs, and they are the enforcers. So they are the criminal group that uses violence to set down the rules and the laws for the Zama Zamas. And before you are tempted to think that this is just another type of security for the informal mining, the brutality that these guys are capable of is something that's kind of hard to get your mind around. We're talking about mass killings, mass burials. You must remember that within the illegal mining, you generally have three groups. It will be the Mozambicans, the Zimbabweans, and the Basothos. And a lot of these guys, if not most of them, if not 99%, are undocumented. And this is also why you see the utilization of poisons like cyanide and mercury that's just completely unregulated and making its way into our water systems. I mean, we are in effect talking about complete water systems from source to ocean being poisoned.
It's an extraordinary story. And we know that mining is heavily regulated, especially gold mining, because of the points that you make now. Cyanide was in the old timers used to use cyanide. They didn't know any better. And of course, the area that we're talking about here, Pilgrim's Rest, the Blyde River Canyon, I guess down to Barberton, that is the first area of gold discovery in South Africa. And it's a different type of gold mining to what's happening in the Witwatersrand. So from what I'm understanding from you, these guys who may have had some training in the mining industry, being Basothos, there was a lot of migrant labor that came from Lesotho in years gone by. They are now mining for who though? Who's organizing all of this? Because you don't get a whole bunch of militias protecting you if you're just popping along to try and scrape a little bit of gold out of the rocks.
Yeah, so like with any other type of syndication, you get different levels that's responsible. So and it's quite a complex network, and so we're talking in terms of who runs the show and who calls the shot. We're talking about up to very, very senior political level in Lesotho. We see some of these syndicate leaders posing with senior Lesotho politicians next to helicopters. We know that there, and I have to be very careful with my words. I'm gonna use allegedly, but it's quite often more than allegedly. But we have senior officials in on our side, even within the police force. I'm talking up to general level is what the evidence and the witness statements point towards. So, and then of course there's everything from corrupt minds. There's corrupt minds that assist in processing the gold, because gold is very difficult to regulate. It's very difficult to say once it's been smelted and turned into jewelry. It's very difficult to fingerprint and to ID back to the source. It's different to diamonds. Diamonds you can easily ID. Gold, not so much. And so the gold is washed through a network. Of course, the money is laundered as well. So at the end of the day, I would say the Basutus that we're talking about, the enforcers who carry the small arms, they're out in the wilderness in the middle of nowhere, occupying the hills around the processing facilities, and on the processing facilities themselves, they manage and run the shafts, the mining shafts. These guys are not on the top tier of this syndication. They're closer towards the bottom, sort of the higher bottom end of the tier. But definitely they are the dangerous ones. These are the guys that are gonna take you out. They are gonna be the ones that are ultimately going to pull the trigger.
It's an extraordinary story. Okay, so we've now got this crazy situation where almost like a foreign force is coming into South Africa, scraping out or mining gold illegally. We don't see anything of it in as taxpayers. It's happening within very short distances of police stations. I come from the rural area myself. I know that in the rural area, everybody knows everything. So it's not like this is all a mystery. There's no question that those members of law enforcement in South Africa are aware of what's happening. But what are they doing about it? Is there any defense? Because we're going to talk about your role in a moment. But is there any defense from the state apparatus against this activity, which does appear to, as you've outlined it, appear to be pretty hectic?
So the short answer is not nearly enough. The problem has mushroomed and it's really spiraled kind of out of control in the last 3 to 5 years. There's been plenty of warnings. There's been media coverage by entities, famous investigative journalism entities like Carte Blanche and so on. So it's not like this problem is unknown. It's been known for quite a while, and yet it's been left to spiral out of control. To make it even worse is the fact that in many cases the government is the owner of the land and the government is in control of the land. So the government here is guilty on 2 or 3 fronts, if not more, very often in some of these areas that are very heavily affected. For example, like you just mentioned, one of the first big processing sites we uncovered in our own work and via the media was a cluster of processing sites within 1 kilometer of the Volkshuisarrest police station. And they were largely left unchecked. And so now what you'll see sporadic operations from the police, mostly uh, caused by political pressure from upstairs. And we've been successful to some degree to also generate a bit of pressure in the media. Now you see these sporadic police operations, and they are largely window dressing exercises, because what the syndicates will do once we generate media attention and there's a bit of a spotlight on the problem, they'll simply switch from day shift to night shift. So if you move through the day, it looks like, wow, look at how much better the problem has gone. But if you stay for the second 12 hours of the day, you'll see, oh my goodness, this is like, in the words of some of the men, this looks like a shopping mall, and it's out in the middle of nowhere. The amount of lights and torches moving around, operating at night. So the reaction from government so far hasn't been anywhere close to what it needs to be in order to solve this problem. And they do not contribute in terms of tax to our country. They are taking potential jobs from our local people, and they are risking, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of jobs they're putting at risk downstream. And so all these jobs, all this tax is being put at risk by foreign syndicates who, quite frankly, they just don't care what they're putting into this water. It's not their problem. It's not their families. It's not their communities.
What brought you to this story? Are you from the area?
So I worked at one point in Big Five for a number of years, and that is how, for the first time, I came across illegal gold mining, and that was the first time that I started dealing with illegal gold mining, and I realized and I noticed just the brazenness of it. It's a relentless onslaught. Now, if you look at the gold price and what the gold price has been doing, and you couple that with the desperation of Mozambicans, Zimbabweans, rural Mozambicans and Zimbabweans, then you can clearly understand why you have this relentless onslaught. And of course, the problem is the chemicals that these guys are using on the banks of the rivers in order to process the gold. And if you put all those things together, you have a recipe for disaster.
Sure. What is Big Five?
Big Five is your big five animals like lion, leopard, and so on.
No, but you said you worked at Big Five. What did you mean by that? I thought it was a company, maybe.
No, I worked for the oldest anti-poaching company in the country, and they ran a paramilitary training program. They have really good training, and within that company, we worked on a lot of these Kruger type sites with rhinos and elephants and these kind of things.
Okay, so anti-poaching, high adrenaline. You then from fighting the poachers discovered there's probably an even bigger problem that's going on here in the gold, in the illegal gold mining. But Devet, this Blyde River Task Force, tell us a little about it, because if the state is not doing what it needs to be doing, there are some people who would say, "Whoa, why are you guys getting involved? Is this not vigilantism? Are you not going into an area where Pretoria should be involved?" Even though we know the chances of Pretoria doing anything have already been pretty well evidenced. Tell us about the task force.
Yeah, so right off the bat, so if I can rewind, we watched this problem expand and unfold for a number of years, and it became very clear that despite all the complaints, despite all the scientific evidence, no one was coming to fix this problem for us. And that's really how we started getting involved. So we had a couple of challenges. One obviously was resources. We don't have the resources that other entities are going to have, because we need to ask for donations. We need to fund ourselves. So resources was always going to be a problem. So we had to decide on a strategy with regards to how we were going to address this issue, and so we are paramilitary trained. A lot of the work we do is kind of reconnaissance based stuff. But do much more than that. We actually look way more at intellectual strategy. So what we did from the get go was we brought together a team of I want to say intellectual people and passionate people, like-minded people who wanted to see this problem solved. So we set up a coalition which consisted of a number of different entities, including a panel of scientists who advised us with regards to testing for water so that we could put together an evidence stack that we can submit to a court of law, because we're not simply trusting in the fact that we're going to solve this through patrols and through the use of firearms. That's a very small component of this. We're going to have to think much bigger than that. So we use the media. I'm not sure if you've seen some of the media work we've done. So we use media. We're in the process of working very closely with very good attorneys who have proven litigation track records. We're in communication with the various departments. We have made it very clear that we want to work with them and not against them. And we've also made it clear that we are in the process of putting together evidence stack. And we've been really successful in getting some of the first accredited proper scientific testing evidence sets back. So we've managed to collect, and in a short amount of time, we've managed to already identify the use of cyanide. We've been able to quantify the quantities that are being used that's making its way into the rivers, and we've managed to detect mercury as well, and the quantities. And we're talking like between 3 to 6,000 the times the recommended safe quantity of these toxins that are making its way into the rivers. We know that arsenic has dramatically increased over the last 6 years or so. Even downstream, they're picking up a steady rise in arsenic levels. That's, of course, a byproduct of mining.
It's a real South African story, one that we've seen in, for instance, the south coast of KZN, where people are defecating in the rivers upstream, and you can't swim there in certain areas anymore because the lagoons are now contaminated with flesh-eating bacteria. This is, of course, far more concerning because it's been done deliberately for profit. But it sounds like the Wild West out there, Devet. Just to close off, give us some color of what is going on. How are residents able to somehow not find themselves or not get themselves into a position where one of these enforcers from the Zama Zamas decide to take a pot at them?
So they navigate this either through leaving the town and not coming back. We've had a number of people reach out to us saying, we left, it became too dangerous. Thank you for what you're doing. And then we have a number of people who now have successfully pivoted to take advantage of this black market economy, and they're staying there. They are selling large quantities of consumable items to the Zama Zamas. And then you have the people who have been murdered or executed or face severe physical consequences. Lucky Mafanga, an activist, is almost to this day, almost a year back, he was shot dead there for speaking out. And that's a very stark reminder to us that this is no joke. My colleague who just finished a mini project with me, he's been shot 3 times. This is no joke. This is a violent, syndicated type of crime. So yeah, and right now we have a new minister in the DFFE, and we believe it's a competent minister. Nobody's perfect. I'm not perfect. I'm sure there are imperfections with him as well, but I think we have a sliver of hope that within the next couple of years we can start applying pressure to the various different departments and get this problem sorted out. It's going to take a couple of years, I can tell you that, but we have no option. Uh, we have to protect our water. It is absolutely crucial.
Are you talking about Willie Okamp as the new minister there?
Yes, I'm talking about Willie Okamp. It's a DA portfolio at the moment. So is agriculture, also a DA portfolio. We had some dealings with the previous minister as well. So we've already reached out. We've been in some conversations with him. And I'm hoping going forward, we can start getting the support that we need regarding this issue.
Well, it's an extraordinary story. And Wet du Toit, thank you for sharing with us the insights on someone who's on the ground, who's actually busy with addressing a Wild West situation. You got to kind of beg a belief sometimes that this is happening in a civilized society like South Africa, where a part of the country is being carved out. And of course, some of the locals, as you mentioned, well, they're quite comfortable with it because they're profiting from it. But the real issue here is the data that is being picked up by the Blyde River Task Force, showing that this is not a localized problem for gold-rich areas that the old timers have been mining or had been mining 150 years ago. This is a problem that stretches right into the tourism industry, the heart of the tourism industry. So, Willie Okamp, you've got the portfolio. Let's see if you can be able to do anything about it. Wet du Toit is with the Blyde River Task Force. I'm Alec Hogg from BizNews.com.